About 2 or 3 weeks after launching this app in the App Store, literally our phone rings. And on the other end of the line, we hear, "Hey, it's Steve. What are you doing? Want to come over to my house tomorrow?" And we're like, "Steve? Jobs?" I used to joke that, every app developer launches a free app and the CEO of the company calls you himself personally. I don't know how he finds the time. So we went over to his house. We talked about technology, the landscape, future of interfaces and artificial intelligence. He made it clear he wanted to buy the company. We said, "We're flattered, thank you, but not interested," and we left. Almost the end of the story. He and Scott Forstall came back a few months later and really convinced us that we could change the world more with him than without. And so we worked for 18 months to launch Siri. October 2011, Apple launches the iPhone version of Siri. It was quite different than the original app in many ways. And it took off. I mean, a lot of people loved it. You can go see the parody videos and viral videos, etc. But it not only impacted humanity's expectation of what computing should be like, but it also impacted Apple's bottom line. So the stock price for Apple the day before Siri launched was $350. 2 quarters later, so 6 months later, Apple skyrocketed and it set all sorts of records in terms of profit margins, etc. Apple surpassed Exxon and became the highest market capitalized company of all time. And it was just based on their only new product, which was the iPhone 4S, which Apple's pretty much has said it's the iPhone 4 with Siri and maybe a slightly better camera, right? So it did impact a lot of people and was really the start of AI impacting business. Watson and others have gone on and started having business results as well. October 2015. So I'll tell you a personal story. I've got a 17-year-old named Noah. Like most 17-year-olds, he's got blasé, mastered to a science. It is hard to impress him with anything. And so I'm borrowing my wife's car, and we're driving along the highway, and I say, "Hey, Noah, want to see the most significant technology advance since the creation of Siri," which is pretty high stakes in our household. And he's like, "Yeah, Dad, whatever." And so I'm driving like this, and then I just go, "Ugh," and lift my hands up, and the car is coming up to a curve, and the car navigates around the curve by itself. And he's like, "Dad, that's insane!" And I'm like, "Yeah." And the coolest part was it was an over-the-air update. The car did not drive by itself the day before. It's like my phone just, gets little updates. It is nothing like my wife's car gets updates, right? So really AI deployed at broad scale overnight through a mobile push. I thought it was pretty impressive. I never expected that in my lifetime. Then the next question and logical question is, oh my God, where do we go from here? Is AI going to take over, right? Do we have to fear AI? Is it going to learn how to play by itself without humanity involved and eradicate humans? Yes, AI is making rapid progress, almost hockey stick progress, and it's making that progress in narrow areas, in very applied areas, right? So the program that plays chess doesn't drive your car. The program that solves cancer knows nothing about playing a video game, right? In fact, even if you look at a lot of the accomplishments, so DeepMind, the company that did AlphaGo, they first started with a program that could play Atari games like Breakout and things like that. And it learned to achieve superhuman level performance at Breakout. Let me give you one example about Siri. This is how I explain it to my son. So when you talk to something like Siri, there are moments, like it's a machine, it's programmed, but there are moments when it surprises you and it feels almost human in certain ways. It'll say something and say, wow, that surprised me. That was, and you can start to squint and almost believe maybe it has real intelligence. It's just a simulation. So I'll give you an example. So if I take a piece of duct tape and I put it on like this, it kind of looks, in the back row maybe, squint a little, like I'm wearing a tie. But it's not a tie, it's duct tape. You know that, right? But it's kind of a simulation of duct tape, of a tie. Now, someday, we may actually invent technology that lets molecule rearrangement, right? Because it's all made of atoms. Ties and duct tape, it's all the same. But we're not close. We're not at the point where we can just zap, lead and turn it into gold. We're not at the point where a duct tape will rearrange it into a tie. And that's how I feel about artificial intelligence. We're a simulation. That's a reasonable approximation, is a useful tool, but it's not about to cross over and become sentient. What Elon Musk and others are talking about is it'll start to be conscious. It'll start to think, what should I do about those humans? Maybe I should get rid of them, right? That's what we're afraid of. We're not afraid of AI just doing what it does a little better, right? And so that, for me, is the point, that generality, that consciousness. I started a company called Sentient. We're not anywhere close to sentience. We don't have to worry that this tie, it'll never become, it's just duct tape. And there's no way that we have to ever worry about it transforming. AI will never cross over. We have nothing to worry about. Okay. Thanks for your question. That, for me, is what you in this room from different industries should be thinking about. How do we apply AI in my industry? How am I going to use this tool? And so I'm going to give you a few examples of how, maybe you've heard of some, maybe not, of how industries are applying AI today. Telecommunications. So you guys, many of you are in this field and are experts more than I am. But I wanted to highlight two areas where I see AI being used in telecommunications. One is kind of optimizing network operations, and things like self-organizing networks are able to start to predict where are problems going to happen. There are self-healing capabilities that are being applied. So many times the network can reorganize ahead of predictions and have no perceived downtime. It helps optimize efficiency. So there are cases where you can actually put to sleep certain nodes in the network and wake them up as needed and reconfigure seamlessly. So the whole structure of AI running your networks and the network operations and organizing your networks, I think is pretty exciting. I know that SK in Korea has been doing a lot in this area, and others may as well. But that's kind of one area where I think it's pretty exciting how AI is being applied. Second is streamlining customer support, of course, through bots and chatbots and the things of this area. Being able to greatly reduce the number of people and have the people be used to handle the most important customers and problems, and be able to automate a lot of that. I think I see a lot of people in telecoms working in that area as well. I'm going to make the claim that we're on the cusp of a paradigm shift. So let's think about it. If you look at the timeline, every 10 years, almost like clockwork, the way people interact with computers changes. Let's start mid-80s. Boom, arrives the PC. We've got a mouse, we've got Windows, we have to learn how to use those things. I still remember the day when my wife said, now how do I shut down the computer? I go, well, you go to the start button. I'm like, that's so weird. But you have to learn these kinds of things, right? Because everyone needed a personal computer. If you think about it, Windows, web, mobile, every 10 years, we are here. This year is the 10th anniversary of that first iPhone that kind of kicked it all off. So the question is, what's the next paradigm? And all of the major internet companies are now pouring billions of dollars into this next paradigm. So Google, Amazon, Apple, Samsung now, Facebook, they're all spending billions of dollars, and they see the assistant not as what it is today, which is a utility. It's not a paradigm today. If I said, I'm taking away your web browser and your smartphone, you'd be like, how do I function? If you say, I'm taking away your assistant, your Alexa or your Siri, you'd be like, that's too bad. Right? It's not a paradigm we depend on, but that is about to change, and that's my claim. The reason they're spending so much money, billions of dollars, to try to win this game is for each paradigm, there's probably a major and a minor winner. Right? So for Windows, maybe it was Microsoft and Apple. Right? But they both had Windows and mice. For the web, maybe it's Google and Amazon. For mobile, maybe Apple, Samsung are the two winners. So everyone is trying to say who will be kind of the primary assistant that you go to and you do all of your daily computing through. That's the question. And I'm not making any product directions for Samsung. They'll do that. But they acquired this technology, and we're looking to release this at large scale. Initially across Samsung devices, they sell hundreds of millions every year, but this is intended, and Samsung has agreed to open this to every device. So this becomes a paradigm like the web, like mobile, that every developer, every industry can think about and really transform what they're doing. And they'll have a new set of tools and a platform unlike anything out there today, whereas you saw the system, the AI, is actually writing the code at query time whenever a user makes a request, rather than in previous generations, a developer would have to hardwire what happens. The AI is actually building, because it'll be different for every user in this room. You'll have different services, different preferences, and so forth. So with that, my last slide. So AI is rapidly improving, not to the point where we have to be afraid. And it's being applied to real-world business problems today. I'm making the claim that the assistant as a paradigm, we're right on the cusp. This is 2 years away. So what will that mean for your business? What should you be doing to prepare for that? For me, trust is the number one requirement of a good assistant. No one is going to use an assistant that they don't trust. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, when you go to a search results, Google has, here's a list of search results that are presumably unbiased and the best they can do in an algorithmic way to give you the best web pages. Not because someone paid them, not because, it's their best list. And then they still have the right to have a sponsored section saying, up here, someone paid me to say that. But that separation has to be very, very clear in an assistant. If it's helping judge things and show you things and orient plans to certain providers, you have to know that it's doing it in an unbiased way and be very, very clear, why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And if assistants don't do that, people won't trust them and people won't use them. In terms of how does Google feel about all of this, or how does Google Assistant and Bixby, which is Samsung's branding of an assistant, how do they relate? They're going to compete, I think. We've talked about the stakes that are in play. Everyone wants to, including Samsung, which is primarily devices, they want to have billion-dollar software and services kind of industry. They want to be the Google of the web generation for this next age. So I think it's going to be co-opetition. I mean, Google and Samsung are partners. They work together in many ways. They're going to compete in certain ways. Ultimately, I don't want 10 assistants. I generally see the assistant very much like the browser. Personalization, very much like cookies in a way, right? It's not domain specific, and we're building on top of what's out there in the internet, like OAuth. When you access a service in Viv, It'll say, this is a third party that you've asked me to choose. To do the thing you wanted, to book that hotel, I have to send them this information. Do you give me approval? Do you want me to remember that approval? Okay, now I can book with that service. So that's building on top of internet technologies. So in many ways, the assistant changes things. In many ways, it's just another interface. It's a browser or a phone. But the real issues are not about the AI or about the assistant, in my view. It's about online information and transactions in general. And we want it, we need it, but there are problems with it too.